Hello,
Hello.
folks. Hello. Ciao,
And,
Luca.
and here we are. I'm in the same place, but this time is your turn to be in a different
It's
place.
my turn to be traveling, and today I'm not at home, so I'm traveling today. So slightly different setup. So I brought a camera, a tripod, and light. Hopefully, everything is enough for the beautiful recording of this podcast. So
It's
fingers crossed.
perfect. And people, hopefully, they're going to listen to us on Spotify now that we are there.
There is a
Uh,
Spotify. Wow! I need to share this. We need to share this
I,
more. Okay.
I thought to listen to yourself.
Of course, I'm listening to myself every single time I take the car to go to work. Look.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing I did yesterday. I was going to buy grocery, and all of a sudden the podcast
You
went
know,
on.
no, this is my point. I drive the car like to go to work every day, right? As I do. I work from home, so that's
Yeah,
why.
everyone got this. And today we're actually talking about the platform trap, where everyone fell one way or another.
Oh, this is. I love this. I love this show. I love this discussion. This is one of the best one. Um, this is one of the best one to do in a while. I think.
Yeah, especially because we saw definitely the kind of like a raise the rise of the platform engineering and internal platform, and one way or another, we have been in the midst of it.
Yes. Oh, it was fantastic. It is fantastic, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like it's I don't know. It's just like, to me, it's like reinventing the wheel. But
Okay.
we can talk
So,
about
what is an internal platform? Okay. Let's go. Let's go step by step. Look at what is an internal platform. What do you define it? Why a company will adopt one? Why a company needs one? Why a company is looking to have one?
I mean, that's a question, or you want me to?
It's a question. It's a question, Luke. It's a question for you.
Platform were born not so long ago. We are talking about a decade ago. In that kind of like intersection of digital transformation, cloud enablement, and so on, and they became this kind of like a center of distribution of knowledge.
Mhm.
I give you the political answer, the one that I should have given when I was working at Talos, because being the chief architect of digital platform, you never spit right in the plate where you eat, so you need to basically promote it well. But yeah, you are basically becoming this kind of like a self-serve enablement for all the outcomes teams. So for all the features, for all the people, for the teams that are developing features for customers. And this is the political answer. Then the non-political answer, the very provocative, is that we still need to feed the consultancy firms, and so we need to find something new for them to sell.
Look, okay.
It all came from Spotify, the one that we just mentioned before. They were one of the beginner, and it all started with ThoughtWorks.
Look, okay. Over the course of my career, I have collaborated with members of the platform teams of a lot of tech and non-tech companies, either in open source or as a consultant. Okay. From my point of view, there is a line between where a platform is useful, okay, an internal platform is useful, okay, and where it's probably not a good idea, okay. And there is a very, I think it's a very clear line in my head, okay, where we can see if we pass that line, it's a problem, and if not, then it's a great thing to have, okay. And I think that is probably what is probably what is creating all the problems in a lot of companies, to be honest, in not knowing where that line is for their organization, and so on and so forth. So yeah, ultimately though, in a lot of cases, an internal platform becomes a massive not invented here syndrome machine.
Exactly.
This is the bad outcome, okay? And a lot of companies thinks that way, okay? Like ends up in that position. And reality is that is not stop being an engine of innovation and becomes an engine of bureaucracy, okay? On that point, at that point, okay?
Well, because it's governance, right? I mean,
yes.
The truth is that, and let's, this podcast is nice. I love to steal something from a friend of mine that that has his own show now, Falsissimo, and the person is Corona. Here we tell things straight, right? As they should. There's no censor. There is nothing. There is the bare truth in our own opinions. But so the platform came also from in a social economical period that was interesting, right? When companies, they found a trick to capitalize on what before was a cost. So the permanent thing of CapEx, OpEx. But I think the issue is that I don't want to say ignorance, but the sometimes a blindness in front of what is good and what is bad led many organizations to kind of like be blind led by the as a service methodology and try to transform internal capabilities as a service for other people. Right.
As a service for other internal team, for
internal team.
Yes.
There is a thin line between that, because, I mean, we can dig later, but 80%, if not more, of the companies that are building a platform, in the back of their head, that's how can I'm building something that another company might
every single one.
Right. At Talos, for example, that was the obsession at the time. And
it's okay. Absolutely. I've seen these multiple times.
Because the platform is a product for them, right? Because they say, I spend money, I need to capitalize, I can capitalize internally and externally, right? So
absolutely. Well, absolutely, it's all about money. Okay. So it's essentially, it's about cost and investment and essentially R&D versus CapEx versus OpEx and so on and so forth, and how things are shaping up in that world. So the problem, okay, let's say you work on a product, okay, at a company, okay. Now, if you work at a product at a company, if it's a digital product, okay, you are essentially on a revenue center, okay. Your product is making money, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as an engineer, you are making money, okay? You are creating value for the company directly, okay? The feature you push, the more feature you push, the more bugs you fix, the more money the company makes, okay? This is more or less. It's not that simple, but I'm simplifying, okay? If you work on platform, okay, you are, at that point in time, you are a pure cost center, okay? You are essentially providing services for the rest of the company, okay? But at that point in time, you are essentially a cost center. If you do your job well, nobody hears from you to some extent. You're not a problem, okay? In that sense, and that is, and managing these on the balance sheet for a lot of organization, it's usually very hard to justify a lot of investment in the platform long term, okay? Because ultimately they see, oh, but it's working. Why do I need one more people here, okay? And so on and so forth. So and he needs to have his own budget line. It becomes his own product for internal teams. But then there is the self-fulfilling prophecy of, okay, now I need to get all the team on the platform. I don't know how many times you have seen that. I now have to get all the teams on the platform. have you ever seen a company where they will able to, after the first team that created the platform, the product that was the pilot for the platform, how many were you ever seen as a situation where all the team got on the platform?
No, but I saw every single time a relation n+1 to the number of platforms, where n is the number of teams. Like but that's the eternal problem of building platforms, is that, I mean, let's lay down the reality of facts, Theo. Building a platform is not something that everyone can improvise doing. Is a very complicated engineering problem, because it requires to have a deep understanding of the physiognomy of your organization. So you need to understand exactly the structure, the relationship, the interactions, the communication. Then you need to understand completely the processes. Technology comes at the end, right? Because it's the last pillar of a platform. A platform is not technology. A platform are pillars that they are combined together. It ends up that technology is not as simple as everyone expects. It's not a matter of taking a framework and building 3 things put together. It's not a matter of like having a team that is called Cloud COE, Center of Excellence, because then with a platform there is the community of practice, where basically is an agora, is a square where everyone can share their own opinion and nobody listens to it. It's just that's just like a political thing that the company do for covering for inclusivity and all this kind of thing. Let's tell the truth, it's a waste of time. And then on the other side, you have the center of excellence, where there's no excellence. There's just a center. And because, no, it's the reality. I mean, I cannot name the companies, but it's easy to know. Having a center of excellence for cloud that creates 1 cluster per project in Kubernetes, it tells you that there is no excellence there. There is no excellence. The issue is, and I tell you very provocatively,
It's a center to drive excellence, Luca. Come
on.
No,
it doesn't drive anything. It doesn't.
I know, but that's the point.
That's a wall where
it's a center for self-help of practitioners. Come on, Luca.
But Theo, you know when there are the crash tests of the car, right? That they take the dummy, they put them in the car and they crash against the wall.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's the exact result, right? The issue with building platform is that my personal opinion is that they always start with the wrong set of principles at the beginning. Like, how many times you saw 20 different ways of having Jenkins deploying something, or you have whatever, Argo, or you have the platform engineer is a cover-up for something that never worked, that was DevOps. And then it evolved into platform engineering, where we say we make this, we try to kind of like flip the equation. But I mean, I think we could talk politically about this thing for ages, because let's be very honest, platform engineering doesn't work as it is right now, so much that Google, probably a small tech company that drives a little bit of revenue, sat down and said, well, guys, hold on a second, what is this madness? And you and I referenced their white paper like more. We should get paid now by Google for all the times that it's free marketing. And now I'm going to ask Yunong to give us at least some goodies for all the time we reference that white paper. But it's true, right? It should be, we should go back to the origin of everything, like having teams that they develop their own functionality, single artifacts deployed, single team, having everything like centralized in a more traditional way, instead of trying to do distribution. When, I mean, we and I already talked about it, but I mean, you know, we are called the Node and the more. We cover the more now. Let's go back to Node, because I mean, many times I saw a platform being a framework. We build all our thing in Express, in Fastify, in Kraken. That's where everything started, or in Happy.
So yes,
the correlation I'm looking like.
Okay, so the fundamental problem here is, I think, stems from what you said a moment ago. Like, let me articulate. Okay, so many times, okay, you have seen a lot of companies say, okay, what is your stack of your platform? At the beginning, it was what is your stack? Then it becomes what's your platform, but more or less, okay, we are talking about the same set of things. You can see this practice show up when you see there is a template repo. Okay, you take that template repo for starting your project, you fork off, you start from that template, off you go. GitHub has even a very nice feature that you can do for this. So you can even just create the repo automatically with all the stuff from the out of the box. Okay, and eventually you end up having N-1 platform to support, because that template repo essentially evolves over time, and the various copies and forks that has been done, that has generated, are essentially replicated.
Yeah, but there's no way to ensure and enforce that, right?
There is no way. Like, there is no way to, well, there are ways in which company can enforce that, but they are built on top of the system. Okay, so they're built at the end of the system, and specifically around certain key vitals of the platform. Okay, for example, a few big companies says, oh, we cannot ship any application that have at least a medium level security vulnerability in it. Okay, for example, this is a key. Or we cannot ship a Node.js version that is, I don't know, out of LTS. I don't know, I'm putting things out in this way. There are, I don't know, automated scanners in place and so on and so forth before code gets into production. Now, as I said,
but can that one be considered a platform, Theo? The Node version, the security?
It's the combination of the two that makes the platform to some extent. Okay, you have because typically when you set up a project, okay, you set up a project, right? Let's say you want to deploy it on Kubernetes, okay? On your Kubernetes, you have your own flavor of metrics, tracing, logs, readiness, liveness, and dependent. These can be different if you are on ECS, by the way, or whatever you want to put it, okay? So, or if you just run it on EC2, okay, still you have the same concepts that applies everywhere. Okay, you have this set of things that are typically specific to you, okay, to your organization. Now, all of these things, okay, are needed for your application to be run in the company systems, in the company cloud, in the company servers. Okay, so so there are a set of server configuration that needs for that data, scripts to deploy stuff, okay, and then there is instrumentation and things that run in the application itself. All those three together, okay, forge essentially the core of the tech of a platform. In my view, okay, all these three things, it's completely horizontal, okay, and of which the other stuff then is built upon. Okay, then there are alerts, there are a lot of other things like user metrics. You can go and make it as complex as you want, but essentially you have a certain piece of code that is like certain bits that are infrastructure, certain bits that are deployment scripts, and certain bits that are essentially framework level and code level. Now, a lot of people will consider only the code level things, the platform, okay? In reality, it's the three things, and you have the three steps, okay? And the three steps can be as complex as we want, okay? Really, like, can get really complex really fast, which is a tricky thing for long-term maintenance. Okay, the more you move yourself into not invented here, okay, syndrome, you end up in very odd places to some extent, because evolving that will become super custom work and a lot of investment needed by the company. So you will need a lot of investment to be done. Now, the problem here is how big is your engineering organization and how many teams these will need to serve, okay? And that is the main driver, you see, because if you have, I don't know, if you have 1,000 engineers, then maybe a platform team might make sense, okay? I'm the first one to say, well, maybe one, it's fit, is good, 2, 3. I've seen a company with 1,000 engineers have 3.
But don't you think that one of the variable there is also the kind of level of command and control that you want to have? Like, for example, right, to me, a platform team, so a platform makes sense when, for example, you have a high degree of standardization required, because your control over this standardization.
Yeah, no, it's for me, it's very different. It's not about that. It's absolutely not about, like, it is, but the problem is different, okay? Why do you need the standardization, okay? Why do you need that level of specificity and create those level of guardrails, okay? Mostly because, and this is unfortunate, okay, you don't trust the developers. You don't trust the people that you're hiring, okay? And because you want them to be as fungible as possible also, okay? Because they are cycling jobs very often, you want to be able to hire them quickly and make them be productive out of the box.
Yeah.
If one leave, you don't want to lose almost any internal knowledge with them, okay? They need to essentially move to the next job, but you're not losing much for them leaving, okay? And so that is from where that command and control concept comes along, okay? Literally, or put it in another way, you could say, okay, I want to, this is true, by the way. I was chatting with this organization that replaced a huge amount of consultants, okay, with an army of boot campers, cycling them every 10 months, more or less, and throwing away a lot of software and so on and so forth in the process. This was cheaper than the consultants, okay?
Well, that doesn't take a PhD in business.
It was actually workable because of the platform that they had. So, because it was engineered essentially to be able to support a lot of throwaway code, essentially, in this sense.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think, like I said, the command and control that you need to have is not only for your liability or your, governance requirement. It's mostly because, like you just said, unfortunately, unfortunately at the same time, because that creates also a very healthy, I think, ecosystem. With these new opportunities coming from newcome developers, there is a lot of legacy knowledge and experience knowledge that cannot be injected into these people in a snap, right? So I think what I saw, for example, designing for the majority of my life platforms is that basically, and I started during the conference when you and I met, so back in 2015, every company have a specific language, almost a DSL that is designed around their processes, their people, their culture, their need. Everything is there, right? So the kind of like universal concept of platform framework cannot be applied to a company, because every company has a slight, tiny variation of what they need. But I think where it gets interesting is that, to me, the the closest wannabe platform architecture that was designed but was a huge failure in execution and implementation by users has been serverless. Because if you look at the concept around all this serverless framework, they are actually very close to what a platform wants to do. Standardize the deployment in terms of like what you need to deploy, standardizing the interface of development, right? Making it accessible as a marketplace. Make it functionalities accessible like a marketplace. I want to have a queue. I just need to do this. Like that's where I think serverless started to show the first cracks, a little bit like the Ocean Gate. And the other big kind of like, let's say, advantage is that it creates a separation of concerns. Great ideas, mediocre implementation, terrible adoption, because we have been using it for completely, I think where we failed as technologists is to absorb the core concept of what was coming to life and try to twist it in different, for different needs. That's my 2 cents. But one thing that actually is interesting is that what I notice is that first of all, platform, they are usually very runtime aware. We haven't been able, and I put also us inside, but just to generalize, we haven't been able to create universal platforms. We have universal principles, but apparently, once again, the implementation becomes very specific.
Yes.
And then not only that, but even within the same language or the same, call it runtime, we started to see the growth of sub-runtimes to fulfill certain requirements, security on one side, or the other one is isolation and so on. So I'm curious, what's your angle there? Like, and we can take a journey from like, why do we have 2 different platforms, one for Java and one for Node if you want, but what I'm hinting is that we solve problems instead of like changing, contributing to the foundation and try to basically centralize, instead of creating a center of solution and reduce fragmentation, we as humans love to create even more fragmentation. And so now you have different flavors that you can run, for example, Node, because, and I pick 1 second and I steal you literally less than a minute. Socially, the platform was creating the full stack, right, profile, right, the full stack developer. So we found JavaScript being the best suitable candidate, right, the best successor to Java and to .NET.
Yeah, it is. In all intent and purposes, it is.
Now there are 3, 4, I can think of 4 runtimes that I can write the same JavaScript stuff with, but they all have slightly different behavior. I can run it in Cloudflare Workers and it's not Node, it's just JavaScript run on.
It's V8 plus, well, they're doing a very good job at implementing all the Node.js APIs. So sooner rather than later, they will probably be able to run Fastify, I think. So the moment they run Fastify, this will be a great day, by the way.
Yeah. So I promise I will make a T-shirt with Fastify X, version X, because Fastify will take a huge turn. Instead of following the new trend of putting the year like Apple decided to do just to create less confusion in people, Fastify will change. We go into X for version 10. But then you have Dino. Then you have Bun.
Yeah.
Then next year you will have Croissant probably, because now it's the trend to have this one. And, well, before we had CoffeeScript. So
well, I think because sorry, look.
They're all starving engineer, like a friend of mine said. There's always food involved.
Let me. I have a lot of thoughts on the topic, as you can imagine. Okay, but ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like all of those runtimes don't matter in a generic sense. Okay, there is workers matter because of it's Cloudflare. Okay, you can execute that in Cloudflare. Okay, so it exists in Cloudflare. Okay, that's how you customize the Cloudflare CDN. So if you buy the Cloudflare CDN and you want to customize it, you have to use workers. You have no other way. Okay, so there is that. Okay, I think in that sense there is no alternative for Cloudflare. Okay, but between Dino, Ban, and Node.js, I don't think functionally they look equivalent. Okay, reality is a little bit different in that sense. Okay, specifically because you see Node as there's a huge level of libraries on npm so far. Okay, and you need to be compatible. Okay, they all have to be compatible. So but they are not. Like, they strive to be compatible, but they are not compatible yet. Okay, and it's a moving target. That's what I'm saying. Okay, for them, and they haven't reached that level yet. At that point, if they ever would, okay, then there are questions of, like, even that they are compatible at API per API, the behavior is slightly different. The timing is slightly different because the underlying technology is slightly different, and these can cause massive difference in terms of the actual applications being executed. So, on that sense, though, I've been recently very, very surprised because somebody was reporting that they were running our Platformatic Kafka client on Dino successfully, and they were just like, "Oh, wow, okay, we did nothing for this." So it was a good thing. But generically, though, the level of compatibility needed is tough. So, and it's very hard for them to compete in that market.
But don't you think that actually, I mean, it's a little bit of a contradiction then in terms this all rise and fall of all these runtimes, sub runtimes, like when we look at platform, I think we should look at primitives at the bare minimum level, and then, like you were saying, you need to stack them up, right, and build closer and closer and closer to reduce the footprint to your developers. Right?
Yes.
On one side, and my kind of like provocative point is here, right? On one side, we have an economy that is driving more and more and more into systems that are based A, on AI, and B, powered by this new generation of developers, right? Let's call them new generation of developers. I feel a little bit like Brunello Cucinelli that always needs to find a new name for, instead of call them operai, call them gold.
Well, because at ET, like ET is, it's happening. I think it's happening very, very fast on a separation between developers and engineers. Okay, and it's the gap. Yeah. The gap between them is getting wider and wider and wider as we speak.
100%.
And also even on the amount of people available for the roles that you need to hire. Okay,
100%.
Like engineer is way harder, very tough selection. Okay, getting a software developer probably way easier. Okay,
100%. And then you have on the other side, which is even more interesting, on the other side, you have basically all these runtimes, and one way or another, they slightly diverge or take distance from the status quo of what has been building and people have been learning, right?
Yeah, but it's even worse than that, okay? Because we say, like, one of the biggest problem, and why to some extent those platforms are a trap, those internal platforms are a trap if not managed correctly. It's, you built your platform, okay, and you say there's 3 pillars. One is the framework, Docker images, local, and so on and so forth. This includes the Node.js version, by the way.
Yeah.
Now, let's say that you start, okay, you started your platform a long time ago using Node 10, okay? Then you need to essentially do an upgrade, okay, to a next version of Node, okay? And you update it to Node, you can update it to Node 12, to Node 14, to Node 16, to Node 18, to Node 20, to Node 22. Now we have Node 24 that it will become LTS in a few months. So what I wanted to say is the management of that version becomes a problem, okay? Because now you say the parameter of the platform is I want all the teams on it, okay? So now I need to force all the teams to upgrade to the new version of the platform, or I have 2 versions of the platform.
Yeah.
And so the net result is a lot of companies in reality tend to stay behind, okay? And in fact, it's the numbers, if I recall correctly, but I need to look at the stat, a quarter of the total number of downloads for Node.js are from versions that are not supported anymore, okay?
I'm not surprised, to be honest.
It's a quarter of that. Like the worst ones, okay, is that Node 12, okay, is downloaded 25 million times per month, with the Node 22 being downloaded 120, which is
yeah, so, but you know, because the platform becomes a cost.
Exactly.
Like the trap, once again, the trap is that it's not only vendor locking, it's also, I call it, when I was at Thales, I think I found like a perfect definition. It's like walking in this, you know, on this path of concrete, but it's still soft, right? You walk, you go down, and then while you're walking, you try to go faster, you go, you know, deeper. But also the sun is there to dry that way faster. And so it becomes like this thing that you get stuck in. And, you know, like back to the engineering problem, you know, when you and I were talking about how can we solve with Platformatic, and we came out with the idea of stackables and try to think how can we actually create this layer that can be, you know, intelligently managed. I mean, it's a very hard engineering problem to solve, right? And so companies, they always
I don't think it's the problem is engineering, to be honest. I think the major problem is adoption and people. And
what do you mean, of technologies in general, or of the platform?
No, for that set of problems, okay, they usually it's whenever you reach that kind of, whoever has that problem, okay, they suffer massively from the not invented here syndrome, and massively, usually, the typical subject, the typical person does that. And therefore, it needs to be their solution, okay? And
yeah, sure.
And that is essentially the problem the biggest barrier for a company, for going back to the starting that you went at the sentence, you connecting to what you said at the beginning, what a company, why there's not a unique universal platform, okay, and so on and so forth. And it's these massive not invented here syndrome, essentially.
Yeah, but you can see it also in, I mean, we can see it definitely in also the world of like frameworks or libraries, right? There are like a multitude of copies of the same thing over and over again. People are trying. When I was in that famous Canadian telco, not to name them and shame them directly, but having a conversation at the time, and we're talking about 2019, 20. About using Express, that is not the Express of today, by the way. Is the Express of today has been revamped. There's more
exactly. Well, Express is
and so on.
It's issuing security, it's managing security now. So at least
exactly. So, but that's the thing, right? You're facing not even. I mean, you're bringing a liability problem inside of your system, and how do you scale it? How do you? And then reinventing yet another framework, yet another stuff. When it was already there. You just
Luca, hear me out. I have an idea. I have an idea for a new framework. Should we do it?
Most important thing is that it's not a nest, but then.
Look, I'm joking, of course. Well, kind of. But
we see it a million. That's the problem. And then you go into other runtimes, and you have the bun remake of a yet another framework, because the world needs yet another one. That's the thing. Is that I think there is a fundamental problem that you highlighted perfectly. That is, engineers, they all suffer on one degree or another. They're in a spectrum of the not invented here syndrome, right? It's an incurable syndrome that we cannot cure. We can only make it better through therapy, through leading and coaching the industry. But I mean, I'm not saying to standardize too much, but also saying roll down with these frameworks. It's just like it's way too much compute for like yet another thing. And then now I tell you the other provocative things, because this morning, I need to catch a flight, so I have all the adrenaline, because then you are stuck for 10 hours in the same place. But then that you are adopting something bad, that is the core of your organization, but yet you keep using, and you say, no, I don't have any problem with that. Somebody, I read something of somebody saying, no, this thing works perfectly for me. Because then you're entering the denial. That's the other thing, right? There are the phases of the engineer, the denial. Yeah. No, it works, right?
And then is this, the next sentence is, oh, it's not the fault of my application, of my code. If I rewrite it in
Go or in Rust or in
no, usually
Elixir.
Go, okay. Because you can go with Rust for other things, but if I rewrite it in Go, okay, it will be so much faster.
But I mean, partially, I mean, it's not I think a fight. I think that was the biggest problem of Node, and it's still there. The eternal fight of languages is just like, don't use a screwdriver to hammer a needle on the wall. It's going to be, but I'm more looking into all these people that are still using Kafka.js, and they tell me we do microservices. All microservices, they communicate with Kafka, and we use Kafka.js.
Yeah.
I cannot name the bank, but I called Julia, my wife, and I said, hey, let's change bank. I'm not going to use this bank anymore. Like I can't. I mean, I know how my money is moved. Look, cash under the mattress, safer, way safer. Bitcoin, less volatile than that, right? Just like I want to invite everyone if you see that there is a library that is unmaintained and you know has problem, just throw it away. Technology was made following the same concept as toilet paper. Use it until you need it, throw it away, pull the roll for a new one.
Yes. Well, I would put it another. I usually say another. I have another sentence for that, but I'm not going to quote it. So.
But technology is at disposal of people, right? Let's not be slaves in one sense and be like zombie followers of technology. It's just like, because a piece of technology is there and it works, it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. Because it works, it's always a lie that we are telling most of the time to ourselves. Because one way or another, it works until you don't test it. That's the biggest problem.
Look, it's even worse than this. Okay, so this is absolutely, these are a few discussions that I had and I was like shocked. Okay, so talking to company put Kafka.js, and I'm using Kafka.js because we have been talking to a lot of companies using Kafka recently. So this is why we have some fresh data on this topic, but it can be any other libraries. It can be Express in 2022. Okay, same concept, same ideas. Okay, you put this thing in, you have these old unmaintained library, whatever, in put in production, and you start seeing incidents. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and literally, instead of like every single indication points to the library is the problem and there is nobody fixing the bugs. Okay, there's not even a company that you can, some maintainers, not even a company, some maintainers who say, okay, take this bag of cash and fix the bugs. Okay, there's nobody you can call. Literally, that thing is abandonware. Okay, and this is, by the way, where, I don't know, support contract, consultants, whatever you want to put them, every companies that provides those kind of services that allow you to de-risk open source libraries are very useful. Okay, there are plenty. So, and but they started to having incidents, and everything points to the libraries. Okay, and they absolutely never ever consider, oh, I need to change the library at all.
Theo, I tell you one thing, because I see that we're almost at time and we made a promise to our listener, but I want to say one thing. Probably could be the topic of another conversation, but I never seen a platform, never, that has 100% test coverage. There's always something hidden here and there, and we just like, throw it under the rug and call it. Look, I just found a piece of paper under my stuff. That's exactly the same thing that we do with technology. Probably this one is a receipt that I needed. Yeah, it's a receipt that I needed. You see where it was? I was looking for it for 3 days. Under the rug, there, and back, That's exactly platform, how it goes. It doesn't work, right? And you have it here in front. Oh, yeah, you're right. Let's move on. You see, that's the thing that drives me insane. It's just like, and the fix is super easy, right? There's no feeling, there's no emotion in technology. There's just like code that works, and that's why AI is so sterile in creating things. Well, that should be another thing, because yesterday, before we close, I had a fight with ChatGPT.
So you use Grok and Claude. Okay,
I use them for different things, right? So Claude is for coding most of the time. ChatGPT is for day-to-day, or like helping me with rephrasing something in documents instead of Grammarly or so on. Grok is for scientific things. Grok is, to everyone listening, I'm a big fan of Wolfram Alpha, coming from, mathematical study. Grok, it's a great alternative. Easier to use, and it does more. Less precise, but with the right set of instruction, can be your best friend. Theo, we are at time, and we are inviting everyone to next
Luca,
week's
oh,
content.
but one thing here for all the 10 people that watched our full and listened to us till the end. Now that we have a logo, okay, are we doing to do t-shirts now, Luca? You're the printer guy, so
Yeah, I will definitely. I have a logo. I have actually the printout here next to me. So yeah, I will make sure to, in my part-time job, to print t-shirts.
and by the way, Luca, you need to do a full video thing on your
Filippo had this brilliant idea, and he also got the task to then make it presentable for being recorded, which means that he will need to clean my space. But yeah, and maybe what we should do, because I know that you were going there, let's do this. Because now we are on Spotify and YouTube. For all our listeners, if you write a comment, it has to have a meaning. Don't write random comments. But all the comments that have a meaning, likes, and so on, we're going to extract every week one person. And I promise I will make a t-shirt for this person and then ship it with a personal note. So I can write with one of my fountain pen.
Haha. Amazing, guys.
Thanks, guys. Ciao to everyone. See you next week.